Crazy.
Ooh, crazy is a fun word. What does that mean?
I've seen a lot of buyers come out of the woodwork that I've been working with for the past couple months. And also I feel like not only are buyers are very picky right now, sellers are being very picky. So it's that like balance as we balance the market out a little bit of is it the seller's market, is it the buyer's market, who's got the power? So we're seeing a lot of negotiations that way.
I don't disagree at all. I think you're spot on. Is anybody else seeing that too?
I'm seeing that as well. Just very lots of busyness, lots of I have several things that kind of cooled off at the end of the year. People kind of wanted to hold back and now they're raging back, both sellers and buyers, and everybody is like so eager to like go 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 go, and I'm getting that feeling of like, okay, there's only one of me and I can only take one person out at a time and we can't all go at the same time. So just feeling that. And same also, Andrew, just have so I've had some buyers that have just been so picky about like inspection issues, and it's just so hard to balance that, like trying to represent your client the best you can but also wanting to wring their neck and and just trying to make sure things stay together. It's been rough here the last couple weeks. I mean, rough in a good way, but just challenging. Things are not easy.
Yeah. And so if you're on this call and you're not seeing this, if you're not seeing an increase in buyer traffic, you're not getting an increase in people reaching out to you because of your prospecting efforts, I would say double down on reaching out to people because they know somebody thinking about moving. Stay in contact, show up at events, be present with people, right? It will happen this year. I feel like this year we are primed up for some good activity. If you are seeing an increase in activity like this, the chances of you getting stressed out, overwhelmed, busy, overworked, um, those chances are real if you don't plan ahead. Okay. Um, I'm going to give you guys a scenario. I'm gonna throw something out there really quick that we had an encounter with this weekend. Nothing big, nothing crazy, but I'm going to throw it out and see if you guys can spot the interesting piece of this. So, Nick, I'm going to use our situation. Okay. I'm going to hide the names to protect the innocent. Right. But Nick takes a buyer out, shows them a house or two last week. They get hot over one of these houses. They're excited. Right. Um, as they're talking about making an offer, they're like, well, I don't know if we want to make an offer on the first house we saw, so they want to see more options. They want to see more stuff. Okay, cool. So we take them out again. They go out and look at three more houses, and there's a front runner, and there's a clear house that they're gonna want to make an offer on. Um, However, the conversation got slower and slower. The buyer started asking more and more questions about how little earnest money they could put down and what happens if there's a problem with the home inspection.
My
So
house. You help yourself to them.
mute. There we go. So you get into a conversation with a buyer before you write the offer, and they're already asking questions about how little earnest money they can put down and what happens if there's a issue with the home inspection. What are a couple of indicators, and what do you think's going on there?
They're nervous just about the process, and
Yep.
maybe you need to have another consultation with them. I mean, even if you did, maybe it's time to say, "Hey, let's back up and go over all of this again so you feel confident."
Yep. That is nail on the head right there. Sarah, other people's opinions. Okay. What, you feel like they're getting feedback from family or, yep. Wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I think you've got to address the fear. Um, Mr. and Mrs. Byer, I can tell you're anxious. Can you share with me what you're feeling right now? And then shut up.
Yeah. We were very close because we had made the offer. We had a verbal acceptance, and we were waiting for the buyer to initial the final stuff, and the buyer dragged their feet. I've never seen buyers drag their feet this hard uh, to initial or sign something. But that's what happened. And Nick and I were like, we're about to fire the missile, that one question. And the question was going to be, hey, I'm getting a feeling that you guys don't want to buy this house anymore. Am I reading that right? We were almost ready to send that question over because they were dragging their feet on signing the contract. Because sometimes buyers feel a certain way, but they're afraid to tell you. And they're about to dig a hole that's 3 or 4 or 5 days deep into a home inspection that's harder to get out of, and as opposed to if we just did it right before we even initialed the contract, right? But I do think, Shelly, you're busy right now. A lot of people are, getting more and more buyer calls and seller calls. The way to avoid chaos and confusion in transactions, especially when things get busy, is to slow it down. Hey, before we get, go ahead and call the lender. Let's get you pre-approved. But before we get too far down this road, let's meet at my office. I want to sit down with you. We're going to make sure that I fully understand what you guys are trying to accomplish here. And I want to make sure that you understand what the market's doing. Okay. And then once we get that process going, then we can get out there and start looking at houses. And then in that buyer consultation, the needs analysis on what they're looking for holds a little bit of weight, but the majority of it, especially if they're first time home buyer, is making sure that their expectations are in check with 2026's market, like making sure that they are committed and ready to go and not just kicking tires. So,
I also, real quick, a suggestion, like when you have a more than a few buyers, I think it's important to prioritize based on timeline, based on buyer attitude, right? If they're saying like, we're not in a hurry, we don't have to buy, like, I'm not jumping out of an appointment for that buyer. Now, if somebody's like, hey, we are ready to rock, like, I'll move mountains. But one thing I always tell my team is like, you're the only one that knows your schedule. They don't. So if that means that I have an appointment and I'm not going to be available, can we do X? Like, I've got to take control of that. If they are constantly telling me my schedule, I'm not handling my business the right way. And what I mean by that is, hey, can we see this house at 10? And I say, yeah, I've got to move some things around, but I should be controlling the schedule. And that's usually a good indicator if I'm going to hit overwhelm or not.
That's a really good point, and this is something I've learned more just in the last year or so, even though I've been in real estate a long time. But I feel like when I started, I was so reactive, like, responsiveness was my love language. And now, like, I try to temper that and not respond so fast. And your client is going to reflect your attitude, sense of urgency, and all those things. And not that you don't want to show that you're ready to help them, but at the same time, if you're like, oh my gosh, we have to go, blah, 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 and all frenetic, they're going to feel the same way. So I've really learned to like bring it down and slow it down and, you know, emphasize how important it is to talk through things before we get too far down the road. So yeah, all that's good.
every Monday, my team and I meet about 11:30, and the first thing we do is we review our pipeline. What buyers are you working with? What new buyers have entered the pipeline? We share with the team, where are they looking? How much are they looking to spend? And what are their criteria? But one of the most important pieces that we talk about on the pipeline is, what's their score on a scale of 6 to 10? Where are they as a client, right? Anybody below a 6 goes on long-term nurture, or we'll set them up on MLS alerts or something like that. Anybody from a 6 to a 10 goes on our high touch board here. So if somebody's a 10, they are writing offers today. They're highly motivated. They're pre-approved, ready to rock and roll. They got the earnest money checks in their hand. Like, they're ready to go. Somebody who's a 9 might have either some hesitancy, or there's a step or a hoop that they have to jump through before they can write an offer, but they're ready. They're just not on the doorstep yet. Might be showing a 9 homes, but there's something that's educational, or maybe they're looking for the right one, something like that. And it kind of gradually goes down from, 8, 7, 6 kind of thing. If somebody's a 6, they want to buy, but they're in a lease for a period of time, or their relocation's not happening for another few months or something like that. by categorizing our buyer and seller pipeline in that way, it's a very easy way to prioritize. Like, hey, this person wants to go out and see houses on Saturday morning at 7:30 and whatever else. It's like, if you're a 6, like, let's reschedule it for another day. It's not a priority to get out there. If they're a 10 and they want to see a house at 9 o'clock at night for $400,000, and that's the only time that they can do it, and I've got to jump through hoops to get there, it's like, either I'm gonna try to make it happen because I know you're gonna write an offer if that house checks all the boxes. Does anybody else have a way to categorize and prioritize your business to make sure that you're not maybe saying yes when you should say no?
No, but I love that. That's such a good idea to put them on the 10-point scale.
Me
And that
too.
way,
I'm going to start doing that.
it's really good.
Steal it, steal away. I mean, and that's the thing is, like, to be a productive business person, there's only 24 hours in a day. And if you're constantly popping up to go do something for somebody who's not ready yet, yeah, you might win some points with them, but are they really respectful of your time? If they understand that they're not in a hurry, why, they can't expect you to be in a hurry. So
I had a client yesterday and it felt so good. It was so nice. She said, we looked at a couple houses and neither one of them were a good fit. And she said, well, how much time do sellers usually need before we schedule something? And I said, well, usually at least an hour, maybe a couple hours, as much time as notice as possible is nice. And then she said, well, how much time do you need? I was like, oh, she thought of me. That's so nice because it seems like it's so rare that people will think like the realtor's not just sitting around waiting for you to call, even though we are. But like it was just nice that she said, "Well, how much time do you need?" And I was like, "Oh, that was so nice to, and it just made me recognize like I need to be more upfront with that information and say, we're ready to go look at houses. We usually need to leave at least a couple hours notice. I need a couple hours notice so that they know how to behave when they want to see a house."
I also think early on it's important in the buyer consult to say, I want to get this out there because I think it's important. I'm a busy and successful real estate agent, and that's going to work in your favor when it comes to negotiation, relationship. The one area that sometimes it can negatively impact you is I'm not going to be able to jump on a dime. And, there was a time in my career when I could. So you're going to have to give me a little grace if something takes a few hours or maybe even till next morning. I promise you will not be homeless. We'll find you the right home. If you find the perfect home, I will make it happen. And people really, really react well to that and respect it.
Taking some notes here. You guys are dropping bombs. So in the buyer consultation, there's some other questions that are key. They're asking, like, Shelly, I love that your buyer respected you enough to ask you the question, well, how much time do you need? I would love that. I always ask my clients, what do your schedules look like? Maybe one person works from home, the other person, drives an hour one way to get to their office. You never know, right? So one of the services that our team offers is if, for example, we find something that's hot and we have a buyer who's a 10, if the situation allows itself, I'll ask them, like, so if you guys are at work and we see something pop up and you want, like, you're all about it, would it help you if we went and previewed it for you and gave you kind of a rundown before we schedule that showing? Because you're not going to be able to see it until 6 at night when you get off work. Would it be helpful if we went and took a tour of that first? Sometimes you'll hear them say, yeah, that's awesome. Or sometimes you'll even hear them say, well, since I work from home, if it's urgent, you and I can go look at it. And then if, when my wife gets off, from work, she can come and, view it with us. So, great to understand their schedule. And if they work until 8 o'clock at night, both of them, or if it's just one person and they have some odd hours or something like that, like, it's good to know what that looks like.
I want to say this too. I rarely show homes at night. And frankly, I rarely show homes on Sundays. You can control your schedule so much more than you think you can. And a lot of it is just the willingness to say, hey, nights I've got a 6-year-old, I'm home with her. Is there any way that you can pop out of work around maybe 3:30 or 4 o'clock? And 90% of the time they'll say yes. So sometimes it's just asking the question and not being afraid.
Here's a question for you guys. What do you think about asking them? Because, you know, I don't have a quote real job where I have to go clock in or be at a desk at a certain amount of time. But a lot of people, they're expected to be at a working location. But what happens when they have a dentist appointment? Do they leave work and go to their dentist appointment? Or if they or their kids or somebody has a doctor's appointment, they leave, right? That's an important thing for them. You could ask your client, does your employer know that you're looking for a house right now? And if they're like, yeah, they know we're looking for a house. I'm like, do you think they would be okay if you left for 30 minutes or an hour during the day to look at a house if it was that important? So yes, buy your evenings back. Get yourself on the couch in front of Stranger Things faster by not being out showing houses at night. The other thing I'll mention, Shelly, this one's for you. I was taught years ago to build a bench of people to help you out, right? Friends, back scratchers, if you will. You'll scratch their back, they'll scratch yours. Hey, is anybody available at 5 o'clock in Campbell County to show a house for me? And then kind of put them on your whiteboard or something like that. And if they reach out to you, do them a favor if they need it, and then they'll be there to help you out. If you have a real estate team, obviously probably going to have a little bit more access to help. But if you don't, if you're flying solo, build a bench of people, form a little group of people that'll help each other out.
Oh, I definitely have a little tribe. So that's usually not a problem. I hate to tap into that unless it's absolutely necessary, because I know everybody has their things, but we definitely help each other out. So that is an awesome thing to have. I'm
Yeah,
going to put you on my bench, Aaron.
I'll be on your bench. I'll show you show a house for you.
Hey, you're awesome. I still
But
have
my
your
bed
ozone
my
machine, by the
bedtime's like
way.
8:30 p.m. So don't make it too late, okay, buddy?
No.
I'm a terrible bench person, just for the record. Keep me off all benches, please.
You guys like how TJ manages expectations? He's like, you can call me, I'll talk to you, but I'm probably not going to be out there showing houses for you. Love it. But here's the other thing: while you're at your buyer consultation, don't forget to ask them that question: who do you know that I need to know? Right? That we got to start flexing that muscle more. Like, hey, I'm looking for a good plumber. Do you know anybody? Does your family have somebody who works on plumbing? Because we just had to kick one off of our vendors list. Always get in the mood of asking, who do you know? Hey, do you have any friends at work that are thinking about moving? Because that is going to help you train them through the next 90 days until you get to closing. It's going to train them that you're constantly looking for people that are great resources. It's going to train them that you're looking for their friends. Who do you know that just got engaged? Somebody who might be thinking about buying a house or something like that. Other thoughts? Buyer consultation, setting expectations so that when you get busy, you don't have to deal with the fray. Here's a question to ask at a buyer consultation that I just thought of. And I thought of it because I got a referral from a past client. Client shows up, car pulls in the driveway, and guess who rolls out of the car? Both buyers and mom and dad. And we had 5 showings lined up. And I'm like, this is going to take forever. I'm going to have to push like the last 2 or 3 showings back because I know that they're going to want to look at everything in this house. So this was a relocating client, and I was going to do the buyer consultation on the fly that day. Well, that didn't happen. However, a great question to ask at a phone conversation when you have your first call with a client, or if you have a buyer consultation in person, is, hey, will any family members or anybody else be along the road with us while we're looking at homes or on the decision process? That's a great question because they go look at the one, right? That house that they're going to write an offer on. And they're like, before we write an offer, I'd like to get my parents in here. Right. And then you're behind the 8 ball. Well, what's important about that? Are they going to kill this for you? Are they going to tell you no to the house that was the best out of 5? Or is one of your parents kind of fronting the down payment for this thing? Like where did they come in? right? Just getting clarity on who are all the people involved in this thing. Because when that pops up at the last minute, it's like, oh, all right, somebody just hit the brakes hard on this thing. Has anybody ever had that happen?
Oh
Aaron,
yeah, I do that. I put that in my buyer consult too. Who, are you going to bring anybody along with us? Is there somebody you trust to use as your soundboard? I try to kind of get it out of them because sometimes they say, "Oh no," and then it turns out there is somebody. So sometimes you got to ask creative questions too.
So let's just say that somebody at a buyer consultation said, "Yeah, I'd like my parents to be a part of this. This is our first home, and I trust them too. So I'd like them to be a part of it." What advice would you give the buyer at that point?
Usually I say, "Well, let's do another one of these and let's get your parents involved in it too."
Yeah, we're about to do another buyer consultation,
I
and they
mean,
come.
yeah, even if we do it on the phone or a Zoom, but I got to have them too because they always have opinions. I mean, not every, parent is like, but we all know the whole stereotype of the buyer dad. And it's a stereotype for a reason. But I usually try to get them involved. Or if I talk to them on the phone and I schedule that buyer consult, then I say, well, whoever it is that you trust to go around with you and help you make this decision, let's have them on this too. Let's find a time when everybody can meet. Or call or Zoom or whatever it is that you all do for your meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one where I'm actually, it's a teacher down in Blue Ash, and she wants to see a house usually right after she gets out of work. And I know that her dad has to see it before we can move at all. And he's a teacher in like Forest Park. So every time when she wants to see a house, I go, okay, well, what's dad doing? Because I know for a fact we're going back there again if he's not joining us the first time. So yeah, you have to keep both of them in the loop. So now I just copy them on everything.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is she's going to see a house. Let's just say that dad hadn't been involved at all. She's going to see a house that she wants to make an offer on, and then she's going to bring dad over there. Well, dad hasn't seen the trash yet. He hasn't seen the one where it looked like the toilet exploded all over the bathroom. He hasn't seen the one where the shingles were curled up and the whole roof needed to be replaced, or the foundation was buckling and had I-beams all over it. He hasn't seen that yet. And if he had seen it, he would have said yes to that house. But since he hadn't, he thought that the loose cabinet hinges were a deal breaker.
Right. I usually say you have to see the bad ones to make the good ones look better.
That's right.
And
I will.
also, like, this is just kind of a funny story, but also just something to think about, especially when you're working with people that like that are personal friends or acquaintances. I showed my son and his fiance a house, the first one I ever showed them. And I kid you not, half of her family tree showed up. Not because they were like decision makers, but they were just excited. And it was like a clown car, all the people getting out to like see this house. And they had like four cars. It was street parking. It was horrible. I was so embarrassed. And it was my own son. Like, but I never said that to him or her. Like, hey, let's just make this with us. And then everybody came. I'm not lying. There was like 8 people there, 8 or 10 cousins, little kids. It was like family
Has
reunion.
anybody ever had
So
that happen? I've seen that go down before. And that feeling you get is just like, oh my
yeah, my
God.
stomach just dropped. I was like, are you kidding me? Are there any cameras?
Yeah,
So yeah,
you look
it's
at the
just that
front
is
door
an
and you're like, oh my
excellent,
God, there's a ring camera here. Oh.
yes, that is an excellent point of discussion in buyer consultation for sure.
Here's another hack, and I just thought about this one too. I thought about a recent example. So there is when a buyer's mindset, right? Where are they at? They're on Zillow, they're on realtor.com. They're looking at the little, is this a dark red dot or a light red dot? Have I seen it yet? Have I not seen it yet? And they're going through there trying to keep everything straight. And what do? They hit the little share button on Zillow and they text it to you and it's like, hey, can we see this one? Well, you already sent it to them last week in the portal. They just missed it, right? But they find it on Zillow. They're like, well, we want to go take a look at this one. Or even better, it didn't show up in their portal that you sent them, but they sent you one outside of it. And that is a red flag. If you've got them set up on a portal that meets their must-haves and they send you one that wasn't on the portal, why is that? Is it outside the area that they told you that they wanted to be in? Is it 3 bedrooms when they told you that they had to have 4? What is it? Right? One thing I've started to do, especially the further the drive, the more I do this. But I've started to go through there and look at it. Is this thing have oil heat? Does it have propane heat? Is it on a septic tank cistern? Is there anything in here that usually buyers have opinions about? Right. There was one that the house was about 25 minutes from my home office, and I would have had to leave and go show this thing at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. And I went down through there and I said, "This one has a cistern. Are you guys familiar with what that is?" And they're like, "Is that a water tank?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "If it rains plenty, you'll have water in your cistern. If it doesn't rain, you're going to have to call a company and have them truck water up the driveway and put it in the cistern." And they're like, "Is that a bad thing?" I was like, "It's not a bad thing. It's just a fact." And I said, "You probably want to make sure you test your water pretty frequently to make sure that the quality of your water is drinkable. You probably want to put a filtration system on there." And they're like, "You know what? We don't want to, that's not the lifestyle of a house we want." And I was like, "Great." And we keep moving. So that saved me not only about an hour of driving, but 30 minutes or an hour of that. And I got to play this Beyblade game with my kid on Saturday morning, and I didn't have to go out and show houses. So everybody wins,
Well, and
right?
I think stuff like that helps build trust with your
Mhm.
clients. The same gal that was so respectful yesterday, the first thing she told me in the buyer consultation was she wanted to buy a house that was low maintenance. And I get that she's single and younger and just not ready for all that. But every house we see is like 100 years old and cracking plaster and like just not homes that I would consider low maintenance. But we had to go see a few for her to understand. And then so I think we had a better understanding after yesterday. And at first, her boyfriend was with her, and I said, "I'm sorry, I'm probably being a buzzkill, but that's kind of what I do." And he was like, "I'd rather you be a buzzkill than a schmoozer." And I'm like, "Well, you'll never catch me schmoozing, but I also don't want to talk you out of a house that you really want. But if you want low maintenance, this is not it." And so, sometimes that helps build trust when you recognize right away this isn't going to be a good fit.
Yeah, in the buyer's consult, one thing that I always say to people is, my goal when you ask me to see a house, I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to look for every reason for us to not go see it. I'm looking for every problem. And my intent there is to save you time. Okay. Secondly, when we go to the house and you're looking at, the beautiful kitchen and the open floor plan, I'm looking for problems. My entire goal is to be the one that sees the things you don't see. And that's where my value comes in. And then I get a secondary commitment, and I want you to make me a commitment. If we are in a house and it's not the one, let's move on to the next one. Let's not waste the seller's time, and let's not waste our own time. Let's focus on ones that actually have a chance. And if you do that, what it does is it prevents you from having to move showings all the time, which I hate to do, and I really rarely do it. But I've had people go in crawl spaces of houses that they're telling you how terrible they are. It's like, dude, what are we doing? I'll usually say that.
That's a key point, TJ. The first time you ever show a house to a buyer, one of the first things you say is like, "Guys, if we're ever looking at a house and it's not a fit, we don't need to stay here." That'll keep you on track, on time.
Nothing drives me crazier than when we go in, they immediately know it's not the house for them. And they're like, "Well, we may, as long as we're here, we may as well see." Why? Why? We're not, this is not HGTV, folks.
I talked
I'm
about
not
that
paid
bored
by the
couple
hour.
last week. Don't become that bored couple of Saturday plans. And they're trying to kill time.
Yep. What else, guys? Does anybody have a niche market? Like they niche into a certain segment of the real estate uh, world?
Well, I didn't think it was until this last year where I sold 5 houses that were all part of a trust or a probate or an estate of some kind. I call them my death houses. Now I
You,
feel
you
like
don't put
I
that in the marketing remarks, do you?
No, I know. But then I was thinking, well, how can I capitalize on this? Because I've learned so much. I mean, it is really interesting. But so I don't know that I say, "Oh, this is my niche." But the last year I've done 5 of them. And now I'm like, well, I know the answer to that question.
How did you get into that?
it was really just kind of accidental, and it just happened that way. The first one was just a client that was referred to me, but turned out she was the executor administrator for the her aunt's two houses, and they had gone through probate, and they designated her as the next of kin and in town. So that's how that one came to be. So there were two with that one. And then from there, it's just, I just got referred people, and it just happened to be that way. I mean, it wasn't that I sought them out, they just came to me.
So it's not like you purposefully like went and talked to a probate attorney and impressed them and they just started sending you deals. It was that just happened to have 5 deals last year that were part of estates and trusts.
Yeah. Yes. And it is. Yes. And I did really learn a lot. So I don't know how I can. I mean, I guess I could go talk to a probate attorney or whoever, but it's I don't know how. I haven't really thought about how to capitalize on it yet, but they're interesting ones. If you guys have done them, they're always something different.
Well, you talk about doing your due diligence on a trust or probate style deal. You start asking a lot more questions and a lot more pointed questions.
Well, and also you figure out that there's some really bad attorneys out there too who give them terrible advice. I mean, there was a few of, I mean, there was one in particular that they were not, when you have an estate, especially if it's a trust, you have to open up a bank account in the name of the trust. So, but a lot of people don't realize that you have to do that in order to pay bills on the property and do all those kind of things. And then when you get the money off the property, it goes into this trust account. You can't be using a dead person's account. So even if you have your name on that account too, it has to go into trust. So I had one where this lady had her trust set up. She was pretty well set, but and he reached out to the attorney, and attorney never told him that. So 2 days before the closing, we're like, I said, you have a trust account, right? Well, no. And I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of involved, but some of it's like kind of basics, but attorneys don't tell them these things. So you do realize there's a lot of bad realtors out there. There's also a lot of bad attorneys out there.
Yeah.
And I think also in those situations, a lot of times the executor that's left to they're dealing with a lot of emotions. There's probably somebody mad at them because they're not making the right decision. And so there's a lot of stress on those people. And sometimes it's not that they haven't been told, they just are overwhelmed. And so having you as a backup, like, hey, did you do this? Did you do that? Knowing all the process is super important. I know at the board, at Northern Kentucky Board of Realtors, we're going to do our next back to basics education thing about probate and about, what are the steps that people need to do when they're in that situation, so that, what I would like to do is have like a little like deliverable that I can give to someone and say, have you checked all these boxes before we list, your loved one's property or whatever, because there's a lot, and a lot of people are just overwhelmed with the whole situation.
I would agree with you on that, Shelley, for sure. Because it is a lot to deal with, especially if you are a next of kin. One of the ones I dealt with, he was not, but he got designated as the trustee. He didn't even know until the guy died. He was just a family friend. And then he got contacted by the attorney and was like, by the way, you're the, executor, the trustee of this estate. And he was like, I'm sorry, what? That was a crazy one too.
That would be hard.
Yeah, and I think that actually speaks to any listing that you go to take. Like, I just think about the things that happen in the 11th hour that, man, if we had just asked that question up front, like this would have gone a lot smoother. So talking about, do you guys ask every seller at listing appointments, are you current on all mortgage payments? Andrew does. I do now. Because, you kind of think that if somebody's missing payments that they might be like, hey, just by the way, you might want to know about this as my realtor who's about to sell this place. But no, they're embarrassed. They missed a payment and they don't want to talk about it. So if you ask them like, hey, I ask every seller this, I have to know, are you current on all your payments? Because the last thing you need is buyer shows up to take a look at your house and there's a foreclosure notice on the front door. Not cool, bud.
And by the way, if you are handling an estate or trust or anything like that, it's if you have a trusted title company, if you can have them run any preliminary stuff on the title, because there was one that we found out that the house was paid off and the daughter wasn't aware, but the dad had taken out a reverse mortgage. And there was a few other things too. So we had the title company run preliminary. We found that before we were able to put it on the market. So we could address some of the things that come up that you're not always aware of. And sometimes if it, like in this case where it was like the family friend, he had no idea. So we did like a preliminary, run through at the title company just to make sure there wasn't anything outstanding that would have come up against the title of the property.
Would it be helpful for you guys if I had just threw together a sheet that kind of, I guess, combines all of the questions that you can ask a seller or a buyer at the consultation? Would that be
Yes, that
helpful?
would be great. I was typing out all those on a different document as they were coming up.
I've actually got 2 sheets from 2 different trainings that I was in, 2 different coaching programs that I can kind of overlay and just kind of weed out the duplicate stuff. That it goes over things like, how many mortgages do you have? Do you know the balances on them? Are you current on all payments? Were you married at any time during owning the property? Just because, somebody's selling a house and they're like, yeah, I need to sell it. And you're not aware that their divorce isn't final. And you get to the closing table and they're like, hey, where's so-and-so that's supposed to sign this deed over? Like if you're prepared for things, there's fewer surprises. And like Shelly said, when you get busy and things are just rolling, you're showing houses, you need a system to fall back on, because if you're not following that system, things are going to start going haywire. So
What if you had like a pre-listing appointment questionnaire or something that, you created a link to that they filled out beforehand and it kind of
Monica
combined?
Weekly has a great one. Um,
I'll
it's
steal
not
hers.
it's not digital. It's something she calls the people the day before, um, and goes through it, but you could easily make it into like a Google form.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
Do you have that, Aaron?
I don't have that specific document, but I know the one you're talking about.
Okay.
My favorite question to ask on a pre-appointment for sellers before I get to the house, it's usually when I set up the appointment. The way I ask the question, I think it goes like this. So, hey, I'm going to be doing some research to make sure that I'm aware of all the pricing in your neighborhood and in your area. So I'm going to do my own research. And I find that every seller has a price in mind and they think their house is worth. What's yours? Because if I'm going to do the comps and I'm thinking 325 and they tell me that, well, I'm thinking of like 375, I want to know that before I go in. I know I've got to do some education and pull some emotion away from it. If somebody tells me that, I don't know, we're thinking 300 and I'm looking at the comps and they're screaming 325, I know I'm going in to share good news. So having some, like, if you can see the other person's cards that they're holding, it will never be a bad thing if you know what their expectations are so that you know how to manage them.
And very often they're going to say, we have no idea. That's why we're calling you,
Yep.
which is a lie. And then I was taught to always say this. Hey, I totally understand. If you did know, what would you think it would be? And they'll answer. It's a bizarre question. If you did know, what would you think it would be? And they'll give you a number, because there's this pressure inside of them now, like, and then they'll give you something and then you can work off of that. And it's always high because they think they can persuade you to be higher, but it'll give you a range.
Hey, Aaron, I always ask that question as well, but I also follow it up with what would an acceptable selling price be for you? Just to see if there's any different number, because sometimes they'll answer the second question before they'll answer the first question.
That's good.
And I also always ask them, hey, are you going to be interviewing any other agents? And if they tell me yes, then I ask them who. Most of the time they tell me. If they tell me, we're going to talk to Aaron Smith, I'll say, that's awesome. Aaron's a great agent. Hey, how did you hear about Aaron? Because I want to know if they were referred to to them by someone they are really close to, or if they just found you on realtor.com, or, how did they come about knowing you? I think that's helpful in knowing what the relationship is before I go in and meet with them.
Do you find that you get any pushback when you ask questions like that?
Every now and then, but I don't care. I'm still going to ask them. And sometimes I'll just turn around and ask them a different way. And, like if they tell me they don't really want to tell me who they've talked to, then I'll kind of circle back to the value question. And if they tell me, oh, I think my home's worth 400, I'll say, okay, that's great. That gives me some place to really start from. Hey, did you get that number from comps that you looked at, from a neighbor's house that sold, or did the agent you've already met with tell you that? And if they tell me, yeah, the agent I already met with told me that, or whatever they say, I'll just say, oh, yeah, who did you say that was? And, sometimes they'll tell me. So,
You're sneaky. I like it.
yeah. But I think that's important information to have because my whole presentation might be a little bit different, knowing who am I competing with and how did they know them.
I got a question. Do you ever think that drives them to think, should I be interviewing another agent? And do you think they've ever called someone else to interview them? I'm just
Um,
curious.
Maybe, but I
Not
really,
that you're worried or anything. I'm just
yeah,
saying.
I mean, if they're going to interview another agent, they're going to interview them. If they're not, they're not. If they were referred to me, they're probably not interviewing another agent, or if they are, they're going to tell me. If they found me on Zillow or Realtor.com, I expect they probably are interviewing other agents. So I want to know where I stand when I go in there.
I also like to ask them what's important in the agent that they choose. What are
Yeah,
you looking for in the agent that you choose to work with? That can
yeah,
tell you a
that's
lot.
or two, asking them what's important. That's
Hmm.
extremely important to know.
This here's a question too that's not necessarily related to agents, but one question that I asked on a pre-listing phone call yesterday, I said, is there anything about the house or the property that you think is its best selling feature? And then I said, is there anything about the house or property that you think might deter a buyer? So I want to know what they think their strengths and weaknesses are. Like if they tell me like, yeah, the foundation leaks, like I already know it going in. I can look at prices that way. If they tell me that they've got some like if they think something is like super awesome, but everybody on this call is probably like, yeah, it's not really a selling feature. I've got to work them away from that adding value because that thing's not going to add the value they think it's going to add.
Mhm.
But I'm going to get that sheet together. We'll have a pre-listing appointment seller questionnaire, and I hope to make it as exhaustive as possible. I'll reach out to Monica on her stuff, and a buyer appointment questionnaire sheet there too, just to make sure that you guys are getting the right questions asked. Buyers will respect it. They'll be glad that you asked the right questions and make sure that everybody's going to have a smooth deal. So appreciate you guys showing up this morning. Love all the participation. We'll see you next Monday. Bring a smile and a friend. See you guys.
Thanks, Aaron.